Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for choosing to come and hang out with me. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Logan Johns. I'll be starting year 4 at Meeker. And today I'm going to focus on a couple of aspects whenever it comes to community service projects. So just to give a little bit of background, this will be my second cycle for filling out for National Chapter Award. Meeker was pretty successful on it the first time that we did it a couple years ago. We won the National Model of Excellence thing, so I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks on not just building a good community service activity that actually serves the needs that serves the needs of your community, but also how to make it look better on paper. And a lot of this stuff that I'm getting ready to teach you about growing the Building Communities division is everything that you can apply towards your entire National Chapter Award application. So for starters, I think we'll probably spend about 15 or 20 minutes just kind of talking about what's a good way to identify needs in our community. How do we get our students lit on fire for wanting to do something like that? So for starters, let's see, I think I know quite a few of you all in here, but what we'll do, so just for those of you, how many of you are in a brand new community this year? One. Everybody else has been at their program for at least a year? Okay, good. So just if you were to, whenever it comes time for like my chapter officer retreat, a lot of times what we do whenever we start thinking about a community service project is I always work with them and I say, okay, we need to understand what the purpose of an FFA chapter is from the very beginning. And I teach my students that the purpose of an FFA chapter is not just for personal growth, but to meet the needs of those around us. And so the deeper understanding that your students have for what an actual need is, the better that they will become at developing a community service project. So just off the top of your heads, for you all, what is a need that is in your community? Okay, this is not good. If you don't know the needs in your community, how are your students going to know? Anybody? Anything?
I'd say the biggest need in our community, Tillman County is one of the poorest counties.
Okay.
So a big thing is hunger.
Okay.
We have the food bank. That's some of the things that we help out with. It's a big need.
Okay. So your students would say hunger. Okay. And do you agree with that? Okay. Do you know what? So what is the what's like your free and reduced rate at school?
Everyone is. The meals are free for everyone.
Well, I should say qualified.
Qualified?
I know. I think Meeker's right at like 60%. That's about where, which is a pretty common trend in Oklahoma. Okay, so hunger is something that's very. It's funny. I'm just working on the National Chapter Award. One of the statistics that I saw when putting that together was 1 in 5. It's not funny, but 1 in 5 kids in Oklahoma do go home hungry. So it's a lot more common than you think. Okay, what's another one? It's going to be a long 50 minutes if you're not going to talk to me. I promise you that. Mrs. Day, I know that you know of some needs that are in your community.
Well, especially here recently with the tornado, we've got an energy crisis. We've got homeless students. We've got, we're still cutting up trees and things like that. So, I mean, and even when I was teaching at Wellston, we had students about water and electricity. So, like codes for kids. Things like that.
Yeah.
Is how we kind of went around it. But I would say the same as in Seminole.
Okay, good. So those are the conversations that I like to have with students. Okay, whenever we're sitting down, planning out our POA, I just ask them straight up. I say, what do you think is the biggest problem that not just our students, but our community as a whole is facing? And they will just spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes talking to one another about, man, so-and-so, like that family's been going through this. This family's been going through that. And so it starts to make them realize, hey, let's get out of our own perfect little bubble and let's go out and let's help some other people. So once we get those needs identified, the next thing that I'll do is I'll say, okay, outside of FFA, what do you like to do? So what's popular at your schools other than your ag chapters? Football, right? Football is a big one. Okay, so how do you combine football with a community service project?
Well, it's already kind of taken in Marlow. The football boys will go and paint all the trees white at the beginning of the year as a community service deal. I don't know if it's for freshmen in the community or what, but the football boys have taken that down and no, they won't let any other organization help.
Okay. Okay. Well,
So my question for you would be, how do you identify those needs in the community if you're not from that town or even that area?
well, the first thing that you've really got to do for you have to become a part of that community. By becoming more of a part of the community is whenever you start to notice things. The other thing I would also challenge you to do is whenever you have an open planning period, walk through your high school. Go look at the kids. Go pay attention to the students that aren't yours. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how big Marlow is. What class are you?
3A.
3A. Okay, so you're bigger than Meeker is. That was one thing that I did my first year while I was there. Was I said, I want to know what bothers some of these kids. On your lunch break, whenever you're on duty, pay attention to what kids eat and what kids don't. Pay attention to what kids show up to school in the same hoodie every day. It's little things like that. But also, you've got to put some trust into your own students and be like, hey, what are some things that you all have noticed in our school that we can do better? Like one thing that my students, which I'm glad it's just this and not like drugs and alcohol as much as, I mean, I don't know what they do because they're a lot sneakier than what we were when we were in high school. So but my kids had the biggest issue with other kids vaping. Like they despised it. And so like they were on this really big like no vaping kick for a while. They didn't ever take any action on it, but that was like one thing that they saw as a really, really big need. I don't necessarily think that's a community service project. That's more of something for a different part of your POA. But getting your kids to start thinking about, like, for example, whenever they do identify that need, then you can take steps to identify an activity to put into your POA somewhere that would go into that healthy lifestyles place. But you've got to, in order to see more of what your community actually needs, you've got to kind of submerge yourself into the community, which is very difficult. I am actually, so this is the start of year 4, and I feel like I have actually just now gotten to do that. Yeah. So that part takes a little bit of time. But also, whenever you start opening up those conversations, but your students might not also understand what a need is. They might not realize, oh, we can do something to help with that. They might not know it. What's another thing that's popular at your school? Oh, it's something that's other than sports.
My kids like to hang out in the A's parking lot, and they will sit there all night.
It's Walmart for us.
Or Sonic Drive-In, or whatever.
So then what? Okay. Okay. So then what would the need be from that? If they're choosing a parking lot to hang out at, the lack of a safe place for them to go, right? So then you could develop your community service project around creating a safe environment for them to be able to hang out that isn't a parking lot, right? So, I mean, like, but for real. So but your students don't see that as a need. But if you were to talk to adults, they're going to say, I don't like the fact that our kids are hanging out in a dadgum parking lot. So then you could develop some sort of a community service project around having a good place for teenagers to go and hang out with, and then you develop a sponsorship program, a mentorship, blah, 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 go all into it. But the ultimate goal of that is to give them a safe place to spend time with one another and develop their friendships rather than just chilling in the parking lot. Okay, what's another thing that like, we got any like drama programs or anything like that?
I do. I have a very big drama program.
Very big drama program. So whenever I say that, like, taking something that's popular, what I mean by that is, what are your students passionate about? Because what I have found that works best is, like, whenever you've got students that get really, really fired up about something that bothers them in their community, something that they're not okay with, and then lo and behold, that kid is just super passionate about band. And they're like, hey, we love crashing the cymbals, man. That's what we love to do. So then you start talking with your band teacher and you say, hey, I think we need to do a band concert, $5 entry, and all the proceeds get donated towards kids that don't have money to eat on the weekends. All the proceeds go towards people or kids not having coats whenever it comes time for cold weather. So that's a good way to look at that. So finding what your kids are passionate about, like this year, for some weird reason, after my kids came home from alumni camp, like they were like, Mr. J, we got to do something with dodgeball. Like we haven't played dodgeball since we were in elementary school. That was some of the most fun we had in a long time. So one of our activities this year on our National Chapter Award was we did a health and nutrition week where we talked about cardio, we talked about strength training, we talked about nutrition, and then at the end of the week, we did a dodgeball tournament, and that was their exercise. So finding those things that they love to do and then combining them with a need is a good way. And I know I'm getting away from community service projects a little bit, but like that is how you start to see more success with developing your program of activities. And that is the strategy that has worked very well for us as far as having activities that students really liked. Like one thing that my kiddos told me was they said, Mr. Johns, we don't like the fact that our veterans, our active duty military, all of them, they don't get recognition but like 3 or 4 days out of the year. I said, okay, what do you want to do about that? And they said, well, our Halloween party is really kind of just for us. Why don't we do something for them? I said, great. What do you want to do? So they got a bunch of candy, a bunch of hygiene products, all this other stuff, and they put together care packages for troops, called Treats for Troops, put together care packages for troops before we had our Halloween party. Little things like that. But, granted, and I think I did the numbers the other day, I've got 60 kids in my chapter. 6 of those kids have family that are active duty military, which is quite, whenever you got 10%, that's quite a bit. So, like, different things like that you can be looking for. It doesn't necessarily have to be going and cleaning up the park, going and picking up trash on the side of the road. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can be anything that really hits home with them. Anything that's something important to them. So Lane, what's something that's important in your community?
So something my kids talk about is they want the school to be prettier. They think it looks like a prison on the outside. So
Do you have a greenhouse?
yes. So have you ever done anything like beautifying the school for community?
I am, turns out, yes, that is actually what I'm in the process of doing this summer. It's great. It's a wonderful thing. It's not glorious work, but very much something that is relevant. However, what you got to be careful with, it's like even if you do beautify the school, your kids, for their state degrees, don't really get community service hours for that because it directly benefits them. That's the part that sucks about it. So it's kind of hard to sell your kids on that. But if it really is a priority to them, and that's something that they really do care about, man, if you've got a greenhouse, start growing some stuff. Get it started up in January, have you a plant sale in April that can fund even more stuff. And then that last week of school when you're like, you know what, state convention's over with, I don't really want to do any classwork. Hey, that's great. Get them out there, make them use their hands and start digging stuff up and getting other stuff planted.
Do you have a sped department?
What department?
A sped department?
Yes.
Okay, so buddy up with them,
Yeah.
and then it can really be something cool. And then, do your after state convention, buddy up with your sped department, teach those students. They love, my kiddos love doing their hands dirty. So, yeah.
It's cool stuff. So now, we can keep this discussion going, but how many of you are actually interested in knowing how to fill this stuff out on your NCA application? How many of you have filled out an NCA application before? How many of us filled it out this year? Okay, good. So, the way that I do it might not be the way that everyone else does it. I will tell you this, my students do plan out every single activity. It's not me just telling them, hey, you guys are going to do this year. They come up with everything. And I do have some kiddos that kind of look over the application, but I think we all probably know this is very much ag teacher driven. Okay, so I'm going to give you the old Rose Bonjour special. All right. Now I don't know where did any of you take part in her NCA workshop she did in 2020? I think she just kind of got bored of sitting at home whenever COVID hit, and so she did a really, really good NCA workshop for everybody online. Okay, well, good. I will try and give you some of the tips and tricks that she told us. Okay, so for those of you that it may have been a couple of years or you haven't ever filled it out, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you got to fill out Form 1. Now, you're going to get through Form 1 and you're going to say, man, that took me like 30 minutes, man. That wasn't tough. And then you get to Form 2 and you go, oh, I got to do this for every activity. So on Form 1, all that you do is you fill out this description. Okay? Now, if you are not going through and labeling out every single thing that you put in your descriptions, in your plans of action, in your outcome, advancing leaders, impact, you've got to put that information in there. Why? Okay, because we have been taught for so long in the FFA world that it all has to be pretty, right? How many of us have ever done a proficiency award application? Right? You want those suckers to be pretty, don't you? This application, because Oklahoma sent how many? 37. We're going to send 37 of them on the nationals. All right? Those judges are going to see hundreds of applications. Okay? The easier you make this thing for them to find your information, the better. Okay? So in your description, you need the following things. You need they call your why statement. So let's just build a why statement for what was an example of a community service activity that we did that we said that would be a good project? I can't even remember it right now. Okay, we can talk about beautifying the school. Okay, so you need your why statement. So it could be something, and I'll just keep it as simple as I can. The Welch school grounds needs a facelift. Okay. You get that done, boom. Then you write in parentheses why. Okay. Now, granted, that's not a good why statement, but that's the reasoning why, right? So it could be, the Welch public school system looks really outdated on the outside of the building, blah, 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 blah. But then right there, put that why in parentheses, because if you put that in the parentheses and it's there, they can't take points from you because it's in there. Okay? The next thing that you got to do is you got to give your purpose. Okay? So then you say the purpose of this is ... That's simple. Don't make it more difficult than it has to be. Okay? I think the description is like 4 points or 5 points or something. By doing that, you've already guaranteed yourself at least 2.5 points out of 5. Okay? And if you write a good statement, you're probably getting closer to 3.5 or 4. And then my equation for a description is normally 3 sentences long. A why statement, the purpose of the activity, and then one brief sentence that is very, very broad about what they did. So this was a community service project to re-beautify the school. That's simple. Boom. Does not have to go super in depth, because then what they really should call the photo caption is the description. And what they call the caption should be, well, they should just, the caption, they call it different things. But your description, very, very broad on what you actually do. But make sure you have that why statement and the purpose in there. You get your points right back. Okay, on goals. How many of you guys just love writing those SMART goals? Okay, those SMART goals, they are a lot of fun to do, let me tell you. But I promise you, if you work in, okay, how many of us filled out applications this year? How many of you got ripped apart for not having a smart aspect on a goal? Anybody? Okay, you can be honest. I got in trouble for a couple on mine too. Okay, the reason that you got in trouble for is because you probably did not include a measurable aspect, or you included more than one measurable aspect. Okay, so you have to determine what the actual goal of this is. The goal for this specific activity is to re-beautify 75% of Welch Public Schools campus. Okay, that 75% is what gives you that smart aspect. However, you need to tell who is going to accomplish the goal in every single goal. Okay, so it would be Welch FFA members are going to re-beautify 75% of Welch Public Schools campus. Oh no, but that still doesn't quite get you close enough on that character count, does it? No. Okay, your character count, you want to be sitting at 20 or less. Okay, that's about the perfect, I guess, like a couple words left, maybe. Not that much though, not that big of a difference. But if you've got like little one-line goals, yep, you're going to get in trouble for that. Okay, why? I don't know, because if you meet all aspects of the SMART goal, what does it matter? But the way that mind works is, well, obviously they've got more time, or they've got more space left. They could have given us more details about this goal. Okay, so sometimes it's going to be Welch FFA members are going to re-beautify 75% of Welch Public Schools front lawns, and then give more description about it. Okay, but one goal per goal. You don't want to say 25 Welch FFA members are going to re-beautify 75% of Welch Public Schools. Okay? Because then they're going to ask you the question, was the goal to have 25 FFA members there? Or is the goal to re-beautify 75% of the campus? So I would recommend, unless the only thing that I give, that is the exception to me, is if you are giving a quiz and you want them to score a specific score on the quiz. That's the only, because if you were to say that 25 students will pass an exam, well, I can make a 60 on something and I passed, right? But if it's a safety exam, do you want kids out there with a 60 on it? No. Okay? So the exams are the only time, which even then, the goal is to have 25 of them pass with a 90% or better. Okay? And then if you exceed the goal, you've had, does anybody know what the rule is for exceeding? How much you have to exceed the goal by? 25%. Yes. Okay, you got to exceed it by 25% or more. Good. So making sure that you're not including more than one smart or one measurable aspect in a goal is very, very important. So that way you ensure that you don't have more than one goal per SMART goal. Okay. Now, it kind of depends for me whether or not I put the biggest goal that I have first, because sometimes goals will make more sense to do them chronologically. But like if the entire scope of the activity is in one day, put that big one first. Boom. We're gonna have, we're gonna raise this much money on this day. We're gonna gather this many things on this day. But like if you're doing a canned food drive, well, like for the canned food drive that we did for our application, I think I did put the number of goods that we raised as the first goal. Okay? But I think that all of those goals were still accomplished on the same day.
And family served would go last.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And I think that that's actually exactly how we did it. So I am a person, I like to set the goals chronologically, but if they're all on the same day, put that big one first, because you want to be able to catch their attention right then and there. Any questions about goals?
What I thought about goals actually, but I don't remember during my
A big thing on that rubric, it says in there is you have to put who every time, but I also think you have to put when every time. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you should always include the date. Okay? So, and like for me, y'all, I know that some of you probably like to say, at the second FFA meeting, these people will accomplish this. Well, Dingus, I don't know when your second FFA meeting is. For all I know, your second FFA meeting was in April. Okay? I mean, for real. Okay? So, like, and I know that it seems like it's a pain, okay? But like me, I put everything into my Google Calendar. So, like, if you are retroactively writing this application, or your students are retroactively writing this application, tell them, hey, go back and look on the AET calendar. We did that a week before. Okay, well, that's your date. Always give a hard date, because that's that timely manner. Okay? Now, like an example for one thing that we did was we had some officer reaction food videos. Okay? And one aspect that we did was we're going to release a video every month and a half. So in the SMART goal, it said beginning August 12th or whatever, and every 2 months afterwards. But that was more of a plan of action than what it is in the goal. We'll get to plan of action here in a second. How many of you got in trouble for having planning goals instead of SMART goals? Yeah, man. So I will tell you this, okay? The biggest difference between a planning goal and your SMART goal is the verb that you use. Okay? A lot of times, it's not even like what you actually say in the goal, but it's saying, like, a planning goal comes from using words like develop, design, create. Okay? So whenever you use verbs like that, they're going to say, that's a big old loss of 2.5 points right there, big dog. Sorry. Okay? So, plan of action. Okay? That is where you get to use your planning verbs. Okay? Now, in your SMART goal, you have to use verbs like students will complete, instructor will teach, community will gather. Okay? You've got to use big action verbs that show that a task was completed. Okay?
Does word tense matter on your description and your goals and your plan of action? Like you're saying, will do this.
Yeah, and it should all be in future tense, right? So our description, your description should be written in future tense. Anybody getting in trouble for that on their applications that they turned in recently? Descriptions have to be written in future tense. The only things that should be written in past tense are your outcomes, your advancing leaders, your impact related to quality standards, and your caption. Okay? So, what was that? So that's everything up until your outcome should be future tense.
And why? Why does it matter?
Because you're supposed to write these goals before you complete the activity, okay? And this is what I will tell you. Did I write the goals on my application before the activity? Heck no, I didn't. But whenever we were starting to work on it as a chapter officer team and a community service committee, I asked students, what 3 things do you want to accomplish with this activity? What are the 3 most important things you want them to accomplish? Treats for Troops, I'll tell you this right now. We had 3 goals. We had an X amount of care packages we wanted to create. We had X amount of thank you letters that we wanted to write, and we had an X amount of return letters to create pen pal relationships to come back to us. It is okay to fail a goal. It is okay to have an unmet. If someone tells you that every single goal on your NCA application should be met, they're wrong.
They knock points off if it says unmet.
If
It's not.
If they do, that is outrageous, because there's nothing in the rubric that says that you have to, ideally, Okay, if the rubric is followed exactly how it is, every single goal could be unmet. And as long as the application is written correctly, you could score 450.
You just have to have a reason why.
Yes. Yes.
And what you would change.
We will get to the outcome here in just a second. So plan of action. That's just all the things that it takes to get the goal done. But you have to include who, what, when, where, how. Okay? Every single plan of action. And this is the other piece I will tell you. If there's ever a who, a what, a when, or a where that changes within that plan of action, you better label it. Okay? And I would also avoid, and if there is potential for it to change, avoid using pronouns like they. Okay? Don't do that. That's not descriptive enough. Okay? If it is very, very clear and defined that the same group of people are going to be doing that same thing that you just described, or like they will then, or then they will, okay? That shows that it's the same group of people. But anytime that it changes, you better label it. Okay? Let's see, what else? I had something else I wanted to say in a plan of action. Okay, how. Whenever you do the how, y'all just throw that how at the end of the sentence. You don't need to throw that in the middle of anything. Just throw it right there at the end. All right? And that's where you use your verbs like design, create, all that, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Because you're showing all the steps that it takes to complete that goal. All right? And it is okay. It is okay to have a goal build off of a previous goal for that activity. Okay? Don't show don't make it two goals in one, but like say that one of your goals is for them to pass a safety quiz. And then using the knowledge from their safety quiz, they will then safely demonstrate blah, da, 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 da. That's okay. That shows that there's growth occurring throughout the entire activity. Okay? Outcome. This part should always be a relatively easy number of points for you to get. Okay? First thing that you've got to say whether or not the goal was met and who it was met by. Okay? Or unmet by. Okay? This goal was met by the Meeker FFA chapter. Or the Meeker FFA officers met all aspects of this SMART goal. Okay? Tell them exactly what the rubric asks for. Because the judges at nationals, and probably even the judges at state too, really don't have time to actually go through and read these things. Some of them will, but the judges at nationals, they're looking to make sure that you check all the boxes. Yep, every single thing was listed and give pretty good reasoning. All right, give them a 5 out of 6. Boom, take your 5 points, roll on with life. Okay? But that outcome, Kate, so-and-so met this goal. This goal was unmet by. If you say exceeded, in that very first sentence, tell them how much you exceeded the goal by. Meeker FFA chapter officers exceeded this goal by 37%. Okay, and then after you give them the percentage, tell them exactly what was exceeded. So if the amount of students there is the goal, then say a total of 54 students completed the hunter safety certification test. Okay? Give them the total number of that activity. Okay? And normally you can get it written to where as long as you include the right amount of kids, or the right people that accomplished the goal, or the goal was unmet by, which we'll talk about unmet here in just a second, and then you tell them how many people actually did the activity, or how much of the stuff you actually gathered, or how many projects you completed, whatever it is, you're golden. Okay? And then that gives you exactly what your outcome's supposed to be. Now, are you supposed to write outside of the scope, the date scope, or the date range of this application? No. No, you are not. However, what part of the rubric does call for you to write outside of the date range. There's only one part that does, and it is if you unmeet a goal. Okay? And that doesn't mean that you give them an exact date, but you tell them one aspect of that goal that you could do better if you were to do this activity again. So, for our Treats for Troops, guess how many responses we got back from soldiers? Our goal was 25. Guess how many we got back? Now, big old fat 0. Okay? We didn't have a single soldier respond to any of our letters. And I was like, well, that kind of sucks. Okay? But that was a goal that they set. And as long as they do the rubric right, it should not matter. Okay? Now, I'm not telling you to go through and make 2 out of every 3 goals for every activity I met. Don't do that. Okay? Because you got to show that you're having some success with your activities. Because you're not going to be getting points on your application whenever you've unmet every single goal that you've set. Okay? But we left it. And so the way that we fixed that was we said, if we do this again, we're going to pick a more attainable goal or a more realistic goal. Okay? So tell them what you'll do better for next time. That is the only time you should write outside the date range. And really, even then, don't give a date. Just say next time, because the rubric calls for next time. Okay? All right. Advancing leaders and impacts. Anybody get report on that? Simon, you can stop raising your hand, buddy. Okay. So, advancing leaders and impact. What this part is, it calls for 2 different types of data. Okay? It calls for 2 different types. Advancing calls for qualitative. Impact calls for quantitative. Okay? Now, how the crap do you show what qualitative data is? Anybody know? I had to look it up. I didn't know how to write it. You make any guesses? Or anybody have a strategy that they use from their application this year to show qualitative data?
Rose just told me to make it fuzzy, warm and fuzzy.
Make it warm and fuzzy, right?
Quality of the activity.
Right. Yes. So I found a website that broke down the difference because I'm like, okay, I know what quantitative means. But I found a website that broke down the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data is recorded by the way that people feel about an activity. Okay? So all you got to do to show that you got qualitative data, our students expressed, celebrity showmanship participants said, first-hand accounts. Okay? That's all that it is. They said that they felt this, or however you got to show, they conveyed whatever it is. Okay? That's how you show that qualitative data. Don't give any numbers. That one's not a numbers game. The next one, and then what else? What else do you got to address in advancing leaders? You got to restate your purpose, right? I wouldn't say the exact same thing on your purpose as what you did in your description. Give a more in-depth purpose of what that actual activity was supposed to do. Okay? And then you've got to talk about what groups benefited and how they benefited. Okay? What groups benefited and how they benefited. And whenever you write that, okay, our FFA members benefited because, okay, that's where it comes back to the pretty part. Okay? This part does not have to be pretty. It doesn't have to. All you've got to do is show they benefited because of blank, 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 blank. Okay? And if it's 2 different groups of people that benefited and your activity clearly shows that, you better list them both. Okay? It goes back to all of your intended audiences. Okay? So advancing and then impact. The only real thing that you have to show in that impact is quantitative data. This amount of students experienced this. These amount of families were reached with children that needed coats for winter. Da, da, da. Okay, now the difference in your impact is that you can't give some sort of a statistic from before the activity happened. Okay, because that shows no impact that your activity made. Okay, so at the conclusion of this activity, 50 FFA members were now equipped to participate in the hunting season safely. Like that was one thing that we did this year, was we had a hunter safety certification deal. Okay, and so my data that I use on impact was we had 6 kids that went out and shot some deer, killed 4 does and 2 bucks. Okay, so use data from your activity. If you don't, you're going to catch some point loss. That was where I caught most of my points that I lost for the state deal. Okay? Related to quality standard. Y'all, this should be easy 4 points because really all you need to do is restate that quality standard. Okay? Restate that quality. This directly related to the quality or to the safety quality standard because it taught students about hunter safety, and then whatever it is, that little blurb that they give you on that quality standard, put it right back in there. Okay? Should be guaranteed 3 to 4 points, that quality standard. Okay? But also, this is what I'll tell you about the quality standard. Okay? Some people believe this, some people don't. I believe it. If that top half of your application sucks, you're going to lose more points on the bottom half of it. It's just how it goes. If you're getting 1.5s on your goals, even though you've got a quality standard statement that probably deserves 4 points, those goals did not reinforce to them that it was related to the quality standard. So even though it's written to the rubric, you're going to catch more deductions.
You might even catch the minus 25 if they don't think it's related at all.
That's right. There is a 25-point deduction for that. Anybody in here catch one of those? Good. That's good. None of us caught 25-point deductions. That's good. Okay? And then that caption. Okay. Y'all, you got to be careful on those captions. I am one of the people that will tell you, do not include students' names in those captions on those pictures. Okay? I don't include anyone's names on any applications because you might get a judge that's like, ooh, did we get their permission to use their names in this application? Because you have to sign a lot of things with National FFA that they like. You make it in that top 10, they're going to pull from your application and they're going to show it to the world. But did we get their permission to use their names? I don't know. Okay? So I would not use any student names in your applications. If they are chapter officers, list what office they are. The chapter president will. Okay? Don't use your name as the advisor, because to them, they don't give a crap what your name is. Your name might be on the application, but they're not going to remember that. Okay? So the FFA advisor. I think I used a total of 2 names in my application, and it was in one goal, and it was it was our game warden. They came and spoke to us. I put the name of the game warden in that goal, and then our local veterinarian. I put her in a description. Okay? I did not use a single student name though. Is that photo caption, does that need to tell what's going on in that picture? What do you think? It does to a certain extent. Don't say this in this picture, student XYZ is doing this. Okay? Don't say that. Describe the entire scope of the activity. Okay? Describe everything that happens. So, a great way to do that is to just kind of restate your goals in completed form. Okay? So, for us, for the hunter safety course activity that we did, we wanted a specific amount of students to attend a hunter safety workshop. Okay, so we said students had the opportunity to attend a hunter safety seminar put on by our local game warden, Mike France. Okay, the next thing that we wanted to do, we took them to a Nerf gun course, and they started shooting each other with Nerf guns. Okay, now, did the application say they practiced their safety methods that they learned? Absolutely. Okay, but we wanted an X amount of students to go to that. So then we say, after their safety seminar, students then put their skills to the test at the indoor Nerf gun course. Our third goal for that was we wanted a specific amount of students to obtain their hunter safety certification. And then for the next part of the description on the photo caption, students then were tasked with completing the hunter safety certification before the start of deer season and ultimately participating in deer season and killing a buck or a doe, whatever they want. Okay, give a description of the entire activity, because what that is like your saving grace. Okay, because there might be some of them that will see your description and they'll go, I don't understand what this activity is. I don't know what this is. So that photo caption, if you were to lose some points in your description, that's a way to get those back by giving an in-depth description of what your entire activity is. And I cannot reinforce this enough to all of you, okay? After you complete your application, you're going to think that you did a lot of self-editing along the way and that you didn't miss anything. Okay? Go back through and do grammar and spell checks, because if you don't, y'all, that's 2 points an application, an activity that you can lose. Okay? 18 points that quick. Okay?
I have
So,
a question about
yeah.
photos.
Okay?
So, I'm pretty bad about taking pictures.
Great.
But, you know, there's certain events like Cult Conference, we don't really have the opportunity to go in there and take pictures, you know, like they're kind of away from us and we're,
Use that chapter officer photo from Colt Conference. It might not be an action picture, but
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like,
I always do my best. Like Colt Conference is kind of a special. That's like the one exception I would make. Okay, is like going to Colt Conference or going to some sort of somebody else's leadership workshop. But even then, you need to be getting action shots of what they're doing. You can't very well fake a Colt Conference picture. But because those pictures are supposed to show the entire scope of the activity. So my suggestion to you is, if you're going to use Colt Conference, a lot of times, those students are starting to gather in the room before Colt Conference has even started. Sneak right there in the back. They don't even know it's not your kids. Bingo! Right there. Get you one shot before your ag teacher meeting and roll on with life. That's what I would do. Because if those canned shots, like I had to jump my chapter reporter this year because I was like, hey, you are taking pictures of kids going, and that does absolutely nothing for us. So, and make sure, okay, whenever you do those pictures in this application, that they are landscape. Okay, I think, what does it say, 4:3? 3-4 ratio, something like that. Okay, and then that you put your 0.75 black border around those pictures. Okay, don't get you a big old thick border. But the way that you do that, you go into PowerPoint, insert the picture, click on picture format, picture border, weight 0.75, and then you right click that thing, save it as a picture to your computer. It just gives it a finished look.
If you take them on your phone or like an iPad, you can change the resolution of the picture. So change it to the highest resolution you can get. That way, when you go to print your application, they don't show up grainy.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, is you're taking pictures on your phone that look good on your phone, but when you blow them up for your application,
Yeah, I know, they look like
start
trash.
to get grainy. And then they say, okay, well, I can't see what's going on. And that's happened to me several times, where I had kids taking pictures, and they were high resolution pictures, and they were low quality pictures, and you got to throw them out because you can't see what's going on.
And also, y'all, I promise you, We all do the same job. I get it. But one of the best investments that you can make is a chapter camera. And you tell your chapter reporter, you just say it very up front. You say, look, this is an NCAA year. It is an expectation that your butt is at every dadgum meeting and you are taking pictures, action shots. You can take your fun pictures too, but you are taking action shots that show the entire scope of the activity. Very, very important. So, and I know, but you can get you one of those, what are they, Canon Rebels? And they're about $500. Okay, so you can get you one of those, and you can get you a long lens for another $300. So get you about $900 invested into a camera set, and then make sure you've got a camera in a kid's hands at every single thing. Because you, as the ag teacher, you don't need that responsibility to be the one taking pictures for everything.
And you
Okay.
can use 412 money for that.
Yes, you can.
That's good activity.
Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. I really don't want to. I hope it wasn't boring.